Tell me about yourself and why you feel you are qualified for this management position.
So, I've been a nurse 5 years. In that time, I've had a lot of leadership experiences. A lot of that time was spent in the emergency department. So, I was on the floor, I was in triage. Triage in itself is also a leadership position because you're in charge of the flow of the unit. So, you help determine how fast patients get to the back and see a doctor, and you make decisions and you communicate with doctors and charge nurses. I also have a current position of charge nurse in the clinical decision unit. So, in that role, I interact with administration, with the OA, the nursing administration, and doctors and the interdisciplinary team. So, I've had a lot of experience there. I've also served on committees. So, I served on the Bridges Committee, which is a link. Basically, it helps link the emergency department to the floors, and we were trying to create better interactions between the two and help speed up patients' wait times going to the floor. So a lot of that had to do with interaction between the emergency department and the floor. So a lot of interpersonal communication happened on that committee. I've also been on the Falls Committee, which is more outcomes and safety focused. So we focus on preventing falls in my unit and in the emergency department currently. So in the observation unit and the emergency department. So with these experiences, I've learned to communicate with people from multiple disciplines. We interact with pharmacy and respiratory and doctors and nurses and administration. I've enacted purposeful change in the Falls Committee and help prioritize unit needs while keeping a pulse on the needs of the hospital at large. My strengths lie in encouraging excellence while still maintaining interpersonal communication. So I feel like I'm really good at pushing people to do their best while still, interacting and listening to them and everything like that. So I do this daily right now.
What is your style of leadership? What style do you prefer or your supervisors to display and why?
I'm a democratic leader, so I absolutely value the input and expertise of all the people in my unit. Right now, as charge nurse in the clinical decision unit, I have nursing assistants with me, and I value their input as well as nurses' input. So I have some nursing assistants that have more experience in certain areas than I do. Like I have one who she has done dialysis. She's a dialysis tech. So when we have kidney disease patients or dialysis patients, I rely on her to, help me out. I don't have a lot of dialysis experience, so I absolutely rely on other people's experience. And I think that when you do that as a team, it's better for the patients because you get everybody's levels of expertise coming into play. Um, in my superiors, I want them also to be democratic. I think that that's the best way that a unit can run because that way they're also listening to my expertise. Of course, a good leader should know when to adapt their leadership style. So sometimes you need to be a little more autocratic in stressful situations. And a leader knows how to do that. And I've definitely done that in times when we've had a patient code or something like that. And you have to step up and just be a stronger authority and make unilateral decisions. So,
Describe the core values that are most important to you and why.
I believe the core values of excellence and teamwork. So excellence is critical in nursing. It's the only way that patients get the best care that they can possibly get. It's what we're there for. We always strive to be excellent. We always strive to provide the very best care possible. And a leader should definitely have that as their number one priority, is to provide the best care possible. My second core value is teamwork, because there's no way that you can have excellence without teamwork. I think that you need everybody working together with a common vision in order to give the best care possible. Nursing isn't a work that any of us can do by ourselves. It's really big, it's really important, it's really stressful, and it's really complex. So the only way to achieve excellence is through teamwork. Those are definitely the two most important things that need to be focused on in a unit.
Give an example of a model of care that you believe is effective in delivering high quality, financial, responsible care.
I think that for the most part, the total care model of care is the most effective one, especially for floor nursing. Nurses serve as this critical person. They're the watchdogs, advocates, care providers, and they're that just essential middle piece that connects the patient to every other person coming in and out of their care experience. I think that it's more efficient and effective and safer for one nurse to be in charge of her one patient. That way, things don't get missed. When you tend to have something like a team care approach to nursing, I think that, like, for instance, if one person is giving medications, one person is in charge of dressing changes, things can get missed more easily because there's not one person overseeing their care. And also, I mean, we know that the doctors are in charge of doing that, but nurses also serve as that backup to them. So if there's not one person backing them up who understands everything, for instance, on my unit, in the clinical decision unit, we often, a lot of our patients are going for stress tests the next day. So we often have to hold certain medications that the doctors will order just as, regular standard, their daily medications, but we have to hold them because of the testing the next day. Doctors are busy and they make mistakes, so people need to be there to watch that. And I feel like something like that could get missed if we just have one nurse handing out medications and another nurse, doing another part of it. So I really feel the total care model is the best. Obviously, there are times when you'll have to adapt, whether it be staffing or budgeting or, some other, it could be a trauma experience, like a disaster experience where you need more of a team nursing approach. But overall, and especially for floor nursing, where patients are there for a while, and I think the patients feel safer when they have one nurse and they know who they can call and who they're going to talk to. So they have their doctor, their nurse. It gets a little scary for patients when they have many different people coming in and out of their room because they're not really sure who their go-to person is and who they can ask for things. So I think it's not only safer for them, but it's more comforting for them. Of course, with total care, nurses still have the help of nursing assistants and other members of the interdisciplinary team, but they serve as that central person.
List 3 skills that you feel are most important for managers to use when leading an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary team. To what extent do you possess these skills?
The most important skill, I think, is active listening. So active listening involves being open to the opinions of others and taking their opinions into consideration as the leader. Active listening involves being present and, not thinking about what you're going to say, not thinking about what you think or what your opinion is or how the other person's wrong. It's taking in their perspective and being completely open to that. You need this in management, especially when interacting with a team. Healthcare is really complex, and the needs of the patients are varied. They have a lot of needs. You might have case management coming in and saying, hey, look, we need to figure out their follow-up care. We need this, I guess, in a leadership position, maybe not as a patient care position. You could have your superiors coming in and saying, we need you to focus on the budget. We're over budget this year. But you also have your nurses coming to you saying, look, we need staffing help. And your assistant managers coming to you with concerns about, maybe various employees coming up. You have a variety of things to manage, and you have to learn how to listen to everybody and understand their perspective. Obviously, listening also involves prioritization because you're taking in all of these opinions and you have to prioritize as a manager. But the very first step is active listening. Having multiple opinions and having a diverse workforce and getting all those opinions from everybody helps you arrive at the very best conclusion you could possibly arrive at. So that's really important, because sometimes things happen and you don't think of the answer. Even as the leader or having a lot of experience, you still might not come up with the best answer. The second most important skill is communication. So that's, first you receive all of this information and then you need to communicate it to your team. So once you've decided on a course of action, you have to be able to communicate it effectively to everybody. This involves being direct, being transparent, being open. You need to be able to make sure that your unit, your team, everybody understands what you expect of them, and what needs to occur. So, if we are having staffing problems, then you need to communicate that to your team and be open. I think sometimes leaders, they mess up because they don't know, or they just don't think maybe to tell everybody, hey, look, this is what's going on and this is what we need to do. Letting staff know that, hey, we need your help. We need you to help fill in staffing. Usually there's many people who are willing to work overtime and pick up shifts. So, or at least in my experience, there has been. Excellent communication skills are also important. If you have disciplinary or any other possible negative interactions, you need to be able to remain objective and diplomatic. That'll help those sort of interactions occur smoothly. So you need to be able to be professional and polite, diplomatic, say things in a way that don't make somebody feel berated or like they're a horrible person or anything like that. The third most important skill in leadership is inspiration or motivation. So that's the third part. First, you've taken in opinions, then you've communicated them to your team, but then you need to get everybody on board. So you need everybody to, be inspired to do what you say. Unit members need to understand why certain mandates or expectations are occurring, why they need to be completely motivated for them to occur. So again, staffing problems. Hey, look, we don't have staff to cover, and we need to be able to provide the best care possible, and motivating them to understand that we're here for the patients, and they need to jump on board and do that. Motivation helps a leader communicate that common vision. So it helps it helps the unit function the best it can. It helps you if you have a future vision for the unit, to help everybody feel inspired to jump on board and be part of a team. Part of that is teamwork. Helping them feel included and part of a group working for a common goal is a really big part of motivation. This is what helps everybody just cling to that and will eventually encourage excellence.
What management skills are you lacking? What is your plan for developing these skills?
So, like most nurses, I definitely feel like I'm lacking the business side of management. Budget planning isn't something that we come across all the time. We have a lot of experience with communication and a lot of experience, with difficult situations, either with patients or with our peers. But the business side of unit management isn't something that we necessarily come across until we're in a unit manager position or some other management leadership position. So I think, analyzing unit costs and the budget and other business interests is something that I would need to jump on. I plan on taking business courses to supplement my knowledge deficit in this area. I would like to eventually go to school to get a master's in leadership, and that would definitely help with some more leadership opportunities there, like learning experiences. I think also finding a mentor once you're in that position, so that when you have questions that aren't standard questions, things pop up, that you can find a mentor in your peers. They'll help you learn and help you grow.
In what ways are planning and budgeting related? What factors would you consider when planning the budget?
So planning and budgeting are definitely intimately related. A well thought out budget requires extensive planning, both for short term and long term unit needs. So, and not only unit needs, but the goals of the hospital too. You have to balance both, I think, as a manager. So, you would need to consider staffing needs and costs, and sometimes that becomes really creative to make sure that patients are cared for when you're also trying to meet budget. I think, balancing short-term, long-term needs is definitely probably one of the ways that we use our prioritization skills in management. So we have to plan. What do we need first, and what do we need second? What can wait? So, for instance, you need to figure out how to supply the unit with their materials. So bandages and alcohol swabs and all of, IV start kits, all the things that you use on a daily basis. You have to figure out how to supply the unit with those. For long term, you're also balancing higher cost items, whether it's Dynamaps or beds or whatever it is that your unit is in charge of buying. So you have higher cost wheelchairs, higher cost items that you have to fit in with your daily costs. So you definitely have to plan. You can't just say, "Oh, hey, guess what? We need new stretchers everywhere," because that's a really large purchase. So you have to be able to have saved money. It's similar to balancing your home budget and setting aside money for bigger purchases. So you can definitely figure out how to, for the planning part, you will have to research. So you have to figure out how to buy things at the lowest cost, whether that's asking other unit managers, what their needs are and buying in bulk so that you get a lower cost. Sometimes the lowest cost comes by determining the potential life of the items. So it's fine. It's fine. So, budgeting for a higher cost item that will last longer, instead of just buying maybe a cheaper item that won't last as long. It's an investment in the future of your unit, and paying a little more now for something that will last you much, much longer and save you money in the future. So planning is definitely a part of that. Creativity is also a part of that. Prioritization is a part of that. And having an open mind when it comes to your budgeting needs.
Let's assume that you are hired into this position and the budgeting process has already been completed by the previous manager. You notice that the budget does not include enough money to cover staffing expenses for 3 months of the fiscal year. What steps would you take?
So this is a really difficult situation. There obviously has to be staff to care for the patient. This situation will definitely call for some creative accounting. So, especially because staffing is one of the unit's most expensive budgeting items overall. There's lots of ways to approach this, and I think what it will take is figuring out lots of pieces to see if they'll work. So you can figure out how many FTEs that you need to cover, so that you have a number of FTEs that you need to have money available for. That way you know the exact amount of money that you need to be able to pull out of other areas, and hopefully there will be some extra money there. Hopefully you can make some changes in the scheduling so that you can help cover in the future. Maybe if you have a couple days of low census, you could pull staff and save FTEs for the future and save some money for the future there. That would help cover probably a portion of your budgeting needs there. It might be possible to change to a team nursing approach, which isn't maybe the most ideal model of care, but it might save you some money. You might be able to still function effectively even with fewer staff. You might need to find other areas to cut funding to pay for staffing. So it's going to be difficult. Cutting funding is always difficult when you don't have enough money. Relaying that to the team will be definitely important, and say, look, we're all finding ways to cut money so that we can pay for staffing for these 3 months. You could see, definitely you would need to look at the budget and see if there's any place that the previous manager overplanned, hopefully there's money there that you can take away to cover staffing needs. Like maybe you could fix some broken machines where the previous manager had budgeted to buy new ones. Definitely there's probably a lot of cost cutting, cost saving measures that you could find in the existing budget as it is. Definitely, again, communicating to your staff, you would need to encourage them to enact cost saving measures and motivate them to do that so that we would be able to cover staffing. If there still wasn't enough money to cover staffing, even after trying everything, I would have to lobby to my superiors for more money. In the end, the patient is number one and has to be taken care of. So you have to be able to have staffing. Of course, when you do that, you need to come prepared and show everybody, like, look, this is everything I've done. You know, we have cut costs, we've fixed machines, we've delayed long-term purchases, we've rearranged staffing. This is how much money we have saved. We have transferred over to the staffing budget, but this is what I'm lacking. And sometimes I think you just have to do that and call on other people and say, hey, look, this is what's going on and we need help. So, of course, I would try everything else first.
How would you describe your level of emotional intelligence? Give 2 examples of how your emotional intelligence has positively impacted a group or team.
So I think I have a high level of emotional intelligence. I'm usually able to understand why I feel a certain way and why other people feel a certain way. I do this a lot in interactions with patients. So sometimes a patient gets angry with you because they're scared. Sometimes a patient wants to leave the hospital because they're scared. It doesn't necessarily have to do with how you've been acting, even though maybe it feels that way when they tell you they want to leave the hospital. So getting to the root of the problem is really important, because a patient who is angry with care that has been subpar needs to be approached differently than a patient who is angry because they're scared. They just got a bad diagnosis and they're in denial, or the beginning stages of, coping with loss, anger. So understanding where people are coming from is really important, and that's a part of emotional intelligence. It's important in a leadership position because you will deal with patient complaints. That will be part of your job. And so being able to recognize a patient who is dissatisfied with their care, and knowing whether or not there is something in your unit that needs to be fixed from this patient complaint, or recognizing that the patient is there because they're scared or their expectations maybe were different than reality. Sometimes that happens. That's important to recognize, so you know whether or not there's something that needs to be fixed in your unit. I think it's also important, like for another example, I've recognized burnout reactions in my peers and understanding, maybe they need someone to vent to. So this happens a lot currently at shift change. Nurses, things happen during the shift and nurses need to talk about them. So during shift change, a lot of times there's a lot of venting and a lot of discussion that goes on between the offgoing nurse and the oncoming nurse. So recognizing this in your employees as a leader, knowing when they come to you to complain, it's important to be able to differentiate whether they are they just need some time to decompress, or if they have some low morale or a bad attitude, something that needs to maybe be tweaked and helped in order to help out everyone else they're interacting with on a daily basis. So recognizing the difference between those two is an important part of being a leader, and emotional intelligence is an important part of being a leader.
Is there anything else you feel would be important for me to know about your qualifications to lead and manage the med/surg units?
Absolutely. So I tend to be very level-headed and calm in times of crisis. Actually, the first time I was told that, it really surprised me, because I was a new nurse and I was scared all the time. So, but I've definitely developed that and grown that, and I don't freak out. I'm really good at diffusing confrontation with patients and peers. So, I've definitely had, difficult interactions with patients and difficult interactions with peers, whether it be doctors that I don't agree with or peers who've had a bad day and need to take it out on somebody. Patients, I think we've all had, negative interactions with patients that need to be fixed. I remember this one patient I had who he was incredibly precise and picky about how he wanted to take his medicines. He took one or two, and then an hour later he'd take another one, and an hour later he wanted to take another one. And I tried really hard to give him his medications the way he wanted them and the way he took them at home, but he couldn't remember his medications. So it was really difficult. I spent about an hour and a half in his room talking to him and trying to figure out exactly when and where he took his medications and how and what dose they were. And I think this was all an anxiety reaction from him. He was nervous about being in the hospital, nervous about having chest pain and needing to go to testing and what that could mean. It built up to being his wife came in and got angry and left, and he was loud and he was difficult. But I kept going to just trying to find the thing that would make him feel better. And I won't forget that hours later, it was the middle of the night, we'd settled down, he'd slept a little bit, he'd relaxed a little bit, and we ended up having a really great conversation about his life in the middle of the night. How he was in the service and traveled, and it was really cool to be able to see the full course of kind of that reaction of him being scared. So anyway, this is a tangent to saying that I keep persisting in times of difficulties, and when patients and peers are being difficult, you have to keep trying to figure out what will work. So determination. I'm also really good at making sure things are functioning up to par. I have high standards and want things to work the right way for the good of the patient, the good of the hospital, the good of the unit. I am definitely able to balance the needs of the unit and the patient and the hospital and prioritize them depending on, what the most important need is at the time. One of my strengths and just the way my brain is wired is the ability to be analytical. So this is really valuable because I can analyze lots of problems and situations and opinions and kind of remove my opinion from it and try to come up with the best solution. And I really enjoy doing that because it's almost like a puzzle. So I'm really motivated, really determined, and I really need to make things happen the right way. And I think that will make me a good manager. Thank you so much for this opportunity.